Tom, I just want to start with a headline I'm seeing go across the screen right now. So we finished talking to Eric Girard, the finance minister, right, about the budget.
Yeah, great.
And now I'm seeing a headline on LCN that says the members, the MNAs in the Parti Québécois will refuse their $500 checks. I'm not sure what kind of protest that represents, but that's the story right now.
Well,
how many is there? There's 4 of them left?
Yeah.
5? I'm sure that'll make a big difference.
Yeah.
However many there are, yeah.
And maybe they earn over $100,000 a year.
Oh, gosh. They do. They earn well over $100,000 a year.
Well, I guess it's not much of a protest, then, is it?
There you go.
Okay.
Talk about your meaningless gesture. There you go. Yeah, I mean that says it all. Maybe I was confused too. I got to be careful because I know that in Ottawa MPs make a bunch more than 100. They're a lot closer to 200 than to 100. I would certainly hope that an MNA is making over 100 today because they do a tough job too. But all that to say that, look, I mean, they can do a symbolic gesture. It worked to the extent that for the equivalent of $500 each, they've got a radio station and a primetime show talking about it.
True.
Good
So,
point.
overall, we talked about this yesterday. We're only an hour into the budget. We've had a day to digest it. What do you think?
Well, I think that overall it was a decent effort. I think that Girard, anybody who just listened to it, the interview that you did with him, the two of you, would walk away saying, look, we're lucky to have somebody of that caliber. And I think that's true. The guy is superb. His main partner in managing the government is Sonia LaBelle. She's outstanding. She's in charge of Treasury Board. So basically, the three people, the revenue minister you don't talk about a lot because basically they're just there to bring in the money. The finance minister is the person with the overall picture of how the government does its job, where it goes and gets money, and how it spends it. But with regard to actual government control, that's the Treasury Board, and that's Sonia LaBelle, and she's just proving herself to be fantastic. The only weak link, of course, is Pierre Fitzgibbon, who, of course, has had a long series of ethical issues that doesn't seem to bother Legault. That will certainly come back up during the election campaign.
All right, look, there is and we have to give credit where credit is due. Now, it's one thing to say we're going to spend the money. It's quite another to see it spent. $8.9 billion being invested over the next 5 years for our health system. It's something we've all been talking about for the longest time. Do we just take solace in the fact that at least it's being addressed? Yeah,
but it can't disappear down a hole. It has to produce a result. And what's always been missing, of course, is a cohesive understanding of how the system has to work. The CLSCs for decades, they were just hobbled. They never really got off the ground. And now, if you talk to anybody who's got home care or anything, the CLSCs are performing fantastically. So they were finally, they picked themselves up, they dusted them off, and they made them work. Our hospitals have first-class health professionals. They are sometimes using very old equipment. We use the fax machine a lot in the province of Quebec, and that becomes a symbol of just how far behind we are, with regard to electronic records and the like. But if you go headlong into that, you wind up with things like the Phoenix Pay system in Ottawa, something that you pay $1 billion for that's worth nothing. So this is why we're so concerned with what's happening with the money in the health sector right now. I'm terrified when I hear François Legault saying that he's going to proceed to I'll use the French word and then try to translate it, la refondation. So he's going to completely restart, pour a brand new foundation for our healthcare system. That terrifies me. Over the weekend, there was a guy named Michel Claire, very capable senior mandarin in Quebec City, who produced a report several years ago about the health system. And it was pointed out in the article that we've had no fewer than 5 massive reports on how to redo our health system over the past 25 years. Well, that's meaningless at that point. You can't get anywhere with that many reviews. All you keep doing is changing the structures and changing the names, but you haven't actually changed the basic problem, which is, we've got very old buildings. We've got people who are working in conditions that are not great. We don't pay our professionals enough. Nurses in Quebec, try to hire a nurse in the Gatineau area. They get 40% more in Ottawa for the same job. So we're not smart about where we put our money and who gets it. And until we have the courage to deal with that, we're going to continue to have problems in our health system.
It makes me think immediately, like $8.9 billion into the health system. Okay, that's fantastic. And I get that Dawson falls under education, but the money needed for Dawson's nursing and radiology department to be able to work and, expand properly, that to me, you're not building from the bottom up. You're not addressing the issues at the very foundation.
I couldn't agree with you more, Natasha. And it's so galling what's happening with Dawson, because as you correctly say, It's not only training more people for healthcare, which is exactly what we need, but let's be honest about it. You've got 1 million Anglophones in the greater Montreal area. And if you're not training people here to that level, you're not going to have them working in the hospitals. It becomes another thing that starts to empty out the community, the lack of services, the lack of institutions, the lack of the ability to get served in your own language. Now, that's a therapeutic tool, language. When you need help, your ability to communicate is already reduced. Being able to do it in your first language is certainly a big help. And this is the type of thing. There's no long-term thinking. That's the number one complaint I've had after my 40 years in government, and 30 of which was in Quebec. I have to say that my number one complaint is the fact that here in Quebec we never do long-term planning.
Let me ask you, because I saw Francois Legault talking about this earlier today, this Liberal NDP agreement, which we kind of look at from a different lens yesterday. Provincially, of course, Francois Legault will try to make as much hay as he can with this. Surprised by the reaction so far?
No, it was predictable, but he's not wrong. And, if you read this thing, such as it is, because the part that we said yesterday, I was writing my piece for the Journal de Montréal. I was doing my first draft today for Friday's piece, and I was actually going through the text of what we were provided, and it's all, well, we're going to make a plan to maybe have some progress on this, but there's almost nothing concrete in there. But what is clear is that they want to touch things like seniors care. That's not federal jurisdiction. That's pure health care. And even the dental, the pharmacare stuff, you're just expecting them to write a check over to Quebec like they're going to do with childcare. That's pretty easy. But with regard to this dental insurance for kids under 12, great idea, by the way, but how's it actually going to work? The Federal Civil Service trying to put a program like that in place, I'll be rolling on the floor laughing my tail off, trying to see how they do it, because they're just so awful at it. So most of this stuff will absolutely never come to pass. And Legault is right. About half of the things that Trudeau announced yesterday, pure provincial jurisdiction, and it's Trudeau being Trudeau.
Okay, that's so interesting to me. You don't think it'll come to pass. We spoke to former MP Olivia Chow and Jack Layton's wife, of course, earlier today. She was elated, absolutely elated at this alliance. And she said, even if it is to the detriment of the party, it's for the greater good, because Canadians are going to finally get access to these services that they so desperately need. Well, but when you say it might not happen, I'm like...
Olivia's a close ally and someone I worked with and I admire a great deal. But I would almost say, write it down in your agenda that the two of us come back on the show 3 years from now as we're ramping up to the 2025 election, and we'll see how much of these promises actually got done. And you know what the answer is going to be? Almost none of it.
Oh, my God.
Wow, but then I hear you say, and from the pharmacare perspective, it's simply a matter of sending Quebec a check in our case.
Sure.
Why couldn't it be the same, as far as dental care is concerned, where you go to say, okay, how many kids are involved in the province? How much will this cost? And then have the Fed send a check that way, too.
That was the Jean Charest approach, and that was the approach that the Liberals took under Bourassa. And it's, in fact, what the Feds accepted to do, even when the PQ was there, when they transferred manpower training over to Quebec. So that's what you call a direct transfer, without conditions, full compensation. And that's, if that formula gets done, that's great. But the Feds would insist on saying, but you have to put in place a program. And the province of Quebec could say, no, we determine what we cover in healthcare, you don't. So that's where it gets...
I see, okay.
The ship could wind up on the reef of that sort of constitutional debacle.
Damn politics. All right.
Yeah, but what else will we have to talk about?
Yeah, that's true. There is that. Tom, thank you.
Great to talk to both of you. Take care.